All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a sprawling, epic tale full of magical conspiracies, savage beasts, and a really classic hero's journey. We're looking at a story that asks a pretty profound question. What happens when a guy who just wants to be left alone is totally forced to step up and save, well, absolutely everyone? I mean, figuring out crop rotation doesn't exactly prepare you for magical warfare, right? But this wild transformation, from living a simple agrarian life to suddenly wielding supreme royal power, is an incredible ride. And it's packed with lessons on leadership and survival that actually apply perfectly to our own lives.
You know, our protagonist's initial worldview is just perfectly summed up by his own words: only fools give their life to kings, only fools risk starving to death. He actually says this when his friends are trying to convince him to join the king's army for better pay. The guy is just incredibly practical and deeply grounded. For him, fighting political wars over barren stretches of land, that's just a fool's errand, especially when compared to the undeniable, literal reality of growing enough food to survive the winter. It's a super relatable perspective, right? Valuing practical survival over some grand, abstract political ambition?
So, that brings us to the core mystery we're diving into today. How exactly does a humble man who absolutely hates war become the savior of an entire kingdom? We are going to break down how the ultimate reluctant hero gets dragged into a massive geopolitical and magical conflict. Really, how does someone who just wants to harvest his turnips wind up wearing a crown?
Section 1. The Reluctant Farmer.
So he starts with absolutely nothing. He was found wandering a battlefield as an orphan and was literally just called boy by his adoptive father figure, Norik. And here is the incredible irony of it all. A man with actual royal blood voluntarily took on the name farmer as he grew up. Why? Because he deeply believed that people become what they do. He builds this quiet, safe little life in the town of Stonebridge with his wife Solana and his young son Zeph. He is a guy who is perfectly content to work the clay soil with his bare, calloused hands to feed his family, totally oblivious to the whole grand destiny thing waiting for him.
When men build lives from honest toil, courage never fails. He passes this simple motto down to his son Zeph every single night, and it basically becomes the philosophical backbone of our hero's entire journey. It's actually a pretty great reminder for us, too. True courage isn't always flashy or cinematic. Sometimes it's just waking up every day and doing the hard, completely unglamorous work for the people you love.
Section 2. The Krug Attack.
Well, unfortunately, peace never lasts long in these stories, does it? The Krug show up, and they are an absolute existential threat to farmers' quiet life. Now, it's really important to note that these aren't just your run-of-the-mill random monsters. They are an obedient, relentless, and totally unquestioning army. Just imagine an enemy that doesn't use tactics, doesn't feel an ounce of pain, and literally refuses to retreat. They are weaponized by dark magic, driven by a sinister, off-screen force with one singular purpose: tearing the kingdom completely apart. And in just a single day, the pacing of his life accelerates from 0 to 100. It's brutal. In the morning, Farmer is out there peacefully tending his turnip crops. By the afternoon, the Krug unexpectedly ambush Stonebridge, and he has to watch his entire world burn. Tragically, his young son Zeph is killed in the absolute chaos of the attack, and his wife Solana is taken prisoner. So by nightfall, the peaceful agrarian guy we knew is just gone. Farmer grabs a sword, and alongside his mentor Norik and his brother-in-law Bastian, he plunges into the dark forest on a desperate, incredibly violent quest for personal vengeance.
Section 3. A Royal Conspiracy.
Meanwhile, way high above the mud and the blood of the villages, we've got this fascinating contrast in villainy playing out inside the grand walls of Castle Everdeel. On one hand, you have Duke Fallow, the king's cowardly nephew. He's driven by your standard mundane political corruption, greed, and just pure entitlement. On the other hand, you have Magus Gallion, this dark sorcerer driven by absolute megalomania who literally wants to rewrite the structures of the world. Fallow thinks he's using Gallion to get the crown. Classic politician move, right? But Gallion is actually using Fallow's political access to plunge the whole kingdom into chaos so he can establish himself as a god. So step by step, the kingdom's security gets completely dismantled from the inside out. First, Duke Fallow secretly poisons his ailing uncle King Conried. Then, while the king is weakening, Gallion unleashes the Krug to slaughter peasants in towns like Stonebridge. This is a deliberate move to draw the king's loyal armies out of the castle. Finally, once the army is totally distracted, Fallow commits the ultimate treason. He flees the castle, taking the 11th and 12th legions with him to seize absolute control. It's wild to think that this horrible tragedy on the ground was orchestrated entirely by corruption at the very top. As these two distinct storylines,
Farmer's gritty quest for revenge and the tragic political downfall of the king start to rapidly collide. A massive secret gets unearthed by the king's loyal magus, an old wizard named Merrick, and it leaves us asking, who exactly is this humble dirt farmer?
Section 4. The True Heir Revealed. 30. Think about that number for a second. That is the number of years ago that a massive, bloody conflict known as the Massacre at Oxley Pass took place. During that incredibly chaotic battle, a single 3-year-old boy was left completely orphaned on the field. That little boy was secretly rescued by Norick, who took him far, far away to Stonebridge to keep him safe from the king's enemies. He raised him quietly, totally out of the spotlight.
And then, boom! In this highly dramatic, super cinematic moment right in the king's war tent, Magus Merrick finally pieces the whole puzzle together. He recognizes old Norick, connects the history, and drops the absolute bombshell. You are the king's son and heir to the throne. So the guy who has spent his entire life mocking soldiers and analyzing soil acidity, he's actually the sole legitimate heir to the dying King Conrad? No way, right?
Talk about whiplash. The ascension happens so incredibly fast. The old king succumbs to the poison, the kingdom is teetering on the edge of total collapse, and before he can even process what's happening, our dirt-loving peasant is thrust right in front of the troops. Crowned King Camden Conrad the moment his father dies, the orphan boy from Stonebridge instantly inherits a fractured army and a massive, terrifying war.
Section 5. The Final Vengeance. Now, as King Camden, he has to face the ultimate evil pulling the strings. He rallies whatever is left of the troops for a final, desperate assault on the Krug. Magus Merrick tragically sacrifices his remaining magic and his life to infiltrate the stronghold and weaken Galleon. But of course, it's Farmer who has to deliver the final blow. He confronts Galleon head-on, and I love this part. He completely ignores all of Galleon's arrogant magical parlor tricks and just beats the sorcerer in a brutal, fast-paced physical melee. The master falls, the Krug collapse, and Farmer finally rescues his wife Solana, discovering in a beautiful little twist of fate that she is actually carrying their second child.
During that intense final fight, Galleon actually taunts him. He asks Farmer if he's enjoying the vengeance of a husband or the vengeance of a king, and Farmer's reply is just this incredibly powerful line, the vengeance of a father. He might be wearing the crown now, but his core motivation, it literally never changed. He didn't fight for a throne, he fought for his family. And honestly, that is the ultimate takeaway of our explainer today. True leadership isn't really about wearing a crown or enjoying the perks of power. It's about a primal, unwavering responsibility to protect your family and your people.
We've seen a man who absolutely hated war become its greatest victor. A man who completely despised kings became the ultimate ruler. So if a peaceful man can be driven to rule an entire kingdom through war, what does it really cost to protect the quiet, simple lives we cherish? That's definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer.
Hello Hollywood movies story lovers, please thank you for watching for video and please subscribe and support for me. Hey YouTube, not is mass content, is my content. I am activity short activities and long movies stories. Thank you for guys watching for movie stories.